Today I want to talk about an interesting weapon from history, the shepherd's axe. They went by a great many names: Fokos in Hungarian, Valashka in Slovak, but their most common name was the shepherd's axe. Coming in around from 600 to 300 grams, these axes were used since the 6th century all the way up to the 20th century, and some are still being used today. Quite interesting weapons, and in my opinion, some of the most versatile weapons of all time. Many had a butt spike here, and the axe head could vary. Sometimes it had a spike, sometimes they had nothing, sometimes they have like this axe, a hammerhead. If you're wondering about these ones, I make myself. I am indeed a blacksmith, but more about in my other channel. So these axes are interesting. They were used as walking sticks. Of course, they were used as tools in the Eastern European wilderness, which is where they are from. But they were also used as weapons, and that's the primary focus of my study of these things as weapons. Of course, I do use these in camping. This one I actually just used in a camping trip. As you can see, it's kind of heavily worn, but still in good condition. Now, these are one of the most versatile weapons I know of. Because of the axe head being so, the shaft being so long and the axe head being used as almost like a pommel, you can use these like a small sword. The balance is a bit more forward, but since these usually had a tip here, you could use these to parry thrusts pretty quickly. You can use MacArthur with these, you can use Monsieur Latouche or Labatt's more, back-weighted systems. You can use MacArthur. You can even use modern foil with this. Of course, be wary because a hand is indeed a target. But you can parry a small sword blade. You can beat it to the side. Beat the guy disengages thrust. Then you beat. Then you thrust. You can do all sorts of small sort of shenanigans. You can also use this as a self-defense, tool. Hitting the hands against knife assailant, using single stick techniques. As I said, this has a point of balance further away from the hand, so it still hits with a good impetus. Doesn't break bone, but it leaves a good bruise. So with this, you can swat away a knife hand, disable the opponent, either walk away like a good gentleman, or if you want to be a bit more douchey, you can strike the hand and then thrust. And finally, we have the star of the show, the axe. These axes in general, axes for fighting, are quite underrated in my opinion, when they really shouldn't be. First of all, this axe being a mere 300 grams, can be used like a saber, but don't let the weight fool you. I would not want to fence with a practice version of this. This practice version, as you can see, it doesn't have an edge whatsoever. Still hits like a damn truck. If you fence with these, you either have to be really careful not to hurt your opponent, stopping the blow and let it the forward momentum just slightly carry it and lightly touching. This is how you spar with these. You don't hit full force. Again, you can use saber, you can use a bit of messer. You can use a lot of different techniques with these because they are so light. Of course, these ones are the lightest ones. There were heavier versions. that you may struggle a bit more to do these fancy, messer techniques, as striking with a false edge. In this case, the blunt part of the axe. Of course, these axes came in a wide variety, as peasant weapons do. Some had a spike here, some had an adze, but really doesn't matter. It's a heavy bit of sharp, pointy metal, and the end of a long stick with spike here. You can fight against armor. You can fight against sabers, if you know what you're doing. You can collapse guards. You can jam the point in the gaps of the armor. You can even use Fiore's techniques. You can grapple. You can do all sorts of stuff with these axes from Eastern Europe. And I think that they need more love because they are very interesting weapons. They're tools. You can use a walking stick. You can use it as a weapon. Anything that the situation calls, this axe can handle. And axes also have another advantage. You do not need speed to create a devastating blow, which is why you don't use these with speed when fencing with. When fencing with these, hitting the head is already risky, even when you pull it back. Even when you heavily pull back the blow, this might be already too much. Even if, let's say, my opponent just around this part, even this might already be too much for a fencing mask, and you might dent one. So imagine, let's say we're in the 15th century fighting against those damned Hungarian knights who want to enter Transylvania and make a mess out of things. Let's say I parry a poleaxe with a shield, go for the knee. You ain't getting up from that. Or let's say I parry a longsword, go for the helmet. Let's say someone turns a half sword, I beat it off, helmet, or the joint. Or I also go into, sort of a half sword and jam that point wherever I need to. I can use the axe, of course, for bashing. It's such a versatile tool that needs more love. These axes are really interesting weapons, and in my opinion, the most versatile, and no wonder they used them from the 6th century all the way to the 20th. They are so versatile, you can put them up against pretty much any weapon, any sword at least, and they do fine. Paired with a shield, and they go up well against a lot of pole arms. Of course, not in formation, but perhaps the way a halberdier was used in the 16th century, you could replace it with a guy with this, a balashka with a shield. Yeah, I don't want to get hit with something like this, especially if it's of the heavier variety of balashka. So yeah, this is my little video on perhaps the most versatile weapon I know of, and I'm certainly a fan of these long-handled, little-headed axes. Light, nimble, and they pack a punch.